623. 13 December 2020. Oh, gee whiz. This is a bit of news. There we go. Yeah, there we go. It's a bit of news. All right. Picking up from the previous video that I'm uploading now. More China. History still, which is fine because it's good to know background. It's good to know the basis for what we're seeing now. So with that, July 21, 2019, China signals military expansion in the Caribbean and other regions. For a very long time, China has denied that its controversial Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI, reeks of hegemonic ambition. But the Chinese State Councilor and Defense Minister Wei Fenghe has spoken at a recent forum of China's willingness to deepen military exchanges and cooperation with the Caribbean countries and Pacific Island countries under the framework of the Belt and Road Initiative. It was the fourth forum for senior defense officials from Caribbean and South Pacific countries held in China. Wei is quoted as saying that cooperation will be promoted in such areas as anti-terrorism, peacekeeping, and disaster relief to strengthen exchanges and cooperation under the framework of the BRI. According to the Chinese publication Xinhua News Agency, Guyana Defense Force, or GDF, Chief of Staff Brigadier Patrick West was in attendance and said that Guyana would like to strengthen exchanges and cooperation with the Chinese military and jointly safeguard regional and world peace and stability. The Chinese military stands ready to deepen mutual trust and consolidate friendship with the militaries of the Caribbean countries and Pacific Island countries, Wei also said at the forum. China also recently concluded the China-Africa Peace and Security Forum, organized by China's Ministry of National Defense, held from July 15 to July 20 in Beijing, where it purported itself to be a stabilizing force for political insecurity on the African continent. The African Union, or the AU, on Monday hailed the forum as a positive impetus in this regard. Representatives of the Chinese military, as well as nearly 100 representatives from 50 African countries and the African Union, including 15 defense ministers and chiefs of staff, were in attendance. Constantinos, who served as an economic advisor to the African Union, is quoted in Xinhua as speaking about China's action plan, which aspires to continue to promote high-level exchanges between Africa and China so as to deepen a traditional friendship, enhance political mutual trust, strengthen strategic coordination, and cement the political foundation of China-Africa relations. The expert said that the action plan, which the forum was held to promote, is intended to support the operationalization of the African peace and security architecture. The Beijing Action Plan is vital as it reiterates that China will increase defense and security assistance to Africa, and the two sides will enhance cooperation and experience sharing in social governance, public security, peacekeeping, cybersecurity, anti-piracy, and counterterrorism, the expert said. China's overseas military base in Djibouti has been playing a part in joint training exercises with allies across the continent, arms sales, and intelligence sharing. The establishment of the base, China's sole foreign military one, has raised tensions with the U.S. for its geostrategic placement at the Horn of Africa. America has accused China of using its BRI to seize influence. You think? One of Guyana's biggest investment yet is the 138 million US it has taken from China Export-Import Bank, one of the country's primary lenders, to fund renovation of the Chedijagan International Airport, or CJIE, I hope I'm not pronouncing that incorrectly, a project that is marred in controversy. 8 years after the works began, Guyana is yet to see a completion date, and there are worries about how soon Guyana will be able to pay back the loan. The government of Guyana has also indicated that it will join the BRI. Chinese leader Xi Jinping in 2017 called BRI the project of the century. Over 100 nations have signed on or shown interest. The country is accused of leveraging massive loans over small states to extend its military footprint. Kaitur News, I'm not even sure how to pronounce that, has reported many of these situations where countries are plunged into debt and some are forced to surrender state assets. Many call it debt trap diplomacy. In a previous article I read, Ecuador is mired in $19 billion of debt, or it's on the hook for $19 billion of debt to China, primarily over a dam that China built that, according to the article, was so shoddily constructed that they simply can't use it. But they owe China big time. Guyana owes China big time. So we're going to see a lot more of that. All right. All right. And this would be, I think, the fourth and last for this. Has China's winning streak in Panama ended? I don't think this is the last one. U.S. noted Beijing's advances in Panama, and Laurentino Cortizo has put the brakes on China and its contractors' trade and infrastructure deals. This is dated March 25, 2020 by Matt Yuki. Frozen trade talks, failed infrastructure bids, and canceled projects suggest that Chinese companies' winning streak in Panama has come to an abrupt end. U.S. diplomatic pressure on the government of Laurentino Nito Cortizo, which took office May of last year, appears to have been effective in Latin America's most geopolitically strategic nation. Even before President Juan Carlos Varela's June 2017 decision to establish diplomatic relations with Beijing that seemed to blindside U.S. diplomats, Chinese firms, both state-run and private, had won tenders for port concessions, power projects, and convention centers. In the following 18 months, the process went into overdrive. Dozens of political and commercial deals were signed. Free trade talks progressed at breakneck speed, and Chinese Premier Xi Jinping made a December 2018 state visit. But that visit was the high watermark for Sino-Panamanian relations. In the U.S. State Department, the pushback had already begun. In September 2018, Washington recalled its heads of mission to Panama, the Dominican Republic, and El Salvador, whose governments had also recognized Beijing in recent months. A month later, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo visited Panama City to warn against the predatory economic activity of Chinese firms. U.S. pressure put an end to China's plans to build a giant embassy at the mouth of the canal. In Cortizo, the U.S. found a more malleable ally despite hailing from the same political party as General Omar Torrijos, the national hero who negotiated the handover of the canal from the U.S. to Panama. Cortizo's administration appeared to have heeded Washington's overtures. The positions have flipped, and the U.S. is once again the dominant foreign player in domestic politics, says Rodrigo Noriega, a political analyst and journalist. China has fallen out of the news in foreign ministry briefings, and a string of commercial decisions suggest a diminishing role. A Chinese proposal for a $4.1 billion high-speed train linking Panama City with the north of the country was dismissed in September 2019. A major electrical transmission project on the Caribbean coast, in which a Chinese group was amongst the two qualified bidders, was canceled and recast as a public-private partnership. In February, Panama Metro, the capital's rapid transport system, confirmed that Korea's Hyundai Engineering would build the third metro line. a $2.5 billion 25-kilometer elevated monorail linking the center into the center with the western suburbs. The losing bidders, including two consortia with Chinese companies, challenged the decision originally made in November. China Railway Group Limited offered a lower-priced project but were disqualified for not meeting minimum technical requirements. In January, no one had the slightest doubt that a Chinese firm would win the metro tender, says Fernando Aparicio, professor of history at the University of Panama. It's another indicator that the government wants to maintain a distance from China, or at least negotiate with China from a stronger position. Maybe it saw what happened in Ecuador, because they're right in the same theater of operation. A few days after the metro announcement, the Ministry of Public Works confirmed that a new bridge over the canal, awarded in 2018 to a consortium led by China Harbor Engineering, or Czech, CHEC, and China Communication Constructions Company, CCCC, would be scaled back. Instead of running over the bridge, Metro Line 3 will run through a tunnel 50 meters under the canal. Rafael Savange, the Ministry of Public Works, says the decision was made due to the discovery of a geological fault under one of the bridge's key pillars that would have led to the delay in construction and incurred larger compensation payments to third parties. However, many remain skeptical that a tunnel under the canal would make sense economically. I think there are two factors at play, says Noriega. The government can't afford a delay on the bridge, and there are real operational challenges for running a metro on it. But there is also a political element. The Japanese underwriters don't want to finance a project of this size for a Chinese firm to build it, and the U.S. doesn't want Chinese firms building directly over the Panama Canal. Hong Kong-owned Hutchison Ports, the third-party operators of a port that would be most affected by the bridge's construction, publicly denied it had requested compensation from the government for losses incurred during delays to the Chinese consortium's project. The port has its own problems to deal with. In 1998, the company, then known as Hutchison Whampoa, and with 10% investment from a Chinese state firm, in other words, the Chinese government, won the concession to operate Panama Ports Company. U.S. Admiral Thomas H. Moore told the State Foreign Relations Committee that the Communist Chinese had virtually accomplished a stronghold on the Panama Canal. In February of this year, the Cortizo government announced it would audit Panama ports. There is a strong current in the government against renewing Panama Ports concession, which expires in 2022, says Aparicio. Meanwhile, the free trade agreement, which many assumed would be rushed through by Varela before leaving office, remains unsigned, and the Chinese embassy has no long-term home. The presence of Chinese engineers and businessmen has diminished. In April 2019, the first Air China flight from Beijing via Houston arrived in Panama City. In February of 2020, this year, the service was suspended. How has the U.S. achieved such a turnaround? And this is interesting. According to Richard Koster, an author and journalist based in Panama since the 1950s, the U.S. still maintains huge clout over individual politicians through the threat of visa denial or inclusion, get this, on the quote-unquote Clinton list. A who's who of companies and individuals that profit from money laundering and drug trafficking, leading to potentially severe sanctions by U.S. prosecutors. I read this, and this was absolute news to me. The Clinton list. In May 2016, Panamanian businessman Abdul Waked's inclusion on the list swiftly led to his bankruptcy. And, Koster says, local politicians haven't forgotten it. Anyone on the list has a type of financial leprosy, he says. Panama's politicians all come from money and have U.S. dealings. Through visas and the Clinton list, the U.S. knows how to keep its client states honest. as long as it's keeping them honest. That's it for this one. 623 out.